clarify that my birthday is not until July 1st, so I'm not 65 yet. I also noticed that when a minister has a birthday, nobody says speech. They know it's just a matter of time before they get one, and you're about to get one. So, no, aging is a funny thing. Well, it's not funny, but it's I was telling Steve that, you still feel like you're 27 when you're almost 65. It's just kind of an odd thing. And nobody believes that Beth is only 3 months younger than I am. They all think I robbed the cradle, and I didn't. I looked as young as she does when we got married. But I think I inherited one of my grandmother's gray hair. She had gray hair for as long as I knew her. And so that's whatever that is. But life is pretty interesting. It just, you think back about all the things you've done and all the people you've met, and I can't even begin to remember everybody that's passed through our lives in churches and, in the ministry, and in just this church. There's been a lot of people come and go, and some stomped out, some died, some moved. It's been all kinds of ways that this relationship changed. But it is, and then I get, now I'm on Facebook, as many of us are, and always running across people from our first church, back in 1981 when we started up in Bay City, Michigan. So we're reconnecting with them and old high school friends, and it's just kind of an amazing thing. And you see all of them, and none of them look like they used to. I'm the only one that does. It's like I don't get that for sure. But anyway, what's interesting about it is there is a part of us that doesn't change. You look in the mirror and you see one thing, but you feel something different. There's this other person there in you. And that's one thing Charles Fillmore used to, that kind of rubbed him the wrong way. He said he was going to stop having his photos taken and stop something else. I forget what it was, but he said, every time I see a picture of myself, he said, that's not who I am. That's a lie. Who I am is something else. And so you see that we get very connected to our body and all of the history that we go through, all the experiences we have. It is completely understandable why we so identify with it. We've stepped on this planet in this physical body. We couldn't experience it any other way, at least that I know of. I think you could probably be here as just a soul. And I think there are probably souls floating around and, doing what souls do without bodies, which is probably have a pretty good time. But we can't see them, we can't interact with them unless we have that ability. And I think some people do, or psychic, able to communicate on levels that most of us don't, or don't on a regular basis anyway. But if we didn't have this body, we couldn't have the kind of experiences that we have. You couldn't enjoy a cup of coffee, you couldn't pick up a paper clip, you couldn't write a letter, you couldn't do anything that we normally do with the body. And that tells me that, my soul doesn't need a body to be complete, but it must have wanted a body. It must have wanted this vehicle to step into this plane and have this experience, all these experiences, meet all these people, and some of which I think I had probably known prior to my incarnation, my present incarnation. When I met Beth, I felt like I'd known her. And I have run across people from time to time where I have felt that. It's a very real feeling. But the point of this is that we lose sight of who and what we are at a fundamental level, at a spiritual level. And again, it's very understandable because there's so many bodily needs that we have and that we're working to fulfill all the time. But when we step into the body, we also step into things like man-made laws and societies, cultures. One of the biggest things I have against the concept of reincarnation is I don't want to be a teenager again. I don't ever want to do that again. Ever. But I probably have. Maybe next time I'll just be a walk-in. You've seen the signs, walk-ins, walk 'em. If I see one of those, I'll take it. Just bypass that whole teen thing altogether. But then you don't know what kind of a dysfunctional body you'll step into at that point either. So it's a very interesting situation. It is our life. It is our situation. It is our body. It is our experience on this planet. We all have a different one. If you ask 100 people, what is Earth life? What is it? What is this thing we call Earth life? And you'll get different answers. Some will say it's a wonderful thing. Some will say it's a horrible thing. Struggle. Some will say it's the easiest thing. It's a classroom, a place to learn. There's all kinds of definitions for it. But what's interesting is that near-death research says a lot of the people that pass and come back say that it seems so meaningless once they step out and get a larger view. And why I think that is because what they do is they touch the reality of who they are, and they realize they have taken on this vehicle that allows them to experience this, and they have mistaken the vehicle for themselves. And that's why they say, all the things I thought were so important are not. There's a larger context. So what they're saying is, I have defined myself and my life around my body. And I'm something more than that. I discovered I'm something more than that. And they come back and they're just full of life and energy, and they want to tell the world, you're not this body, you're not this life, you're not this thing you think you are. Don't get so upset about things. And everybody thinks they're nuts. They used to incarcerate people that had near-death experiences that talked about, not incarcerate, but send them to institutions. They could commit people for saying that they had an experience after they died or were pronounced dead. There's a lot of stories, really interesting. One man had a motorcycle accident when he was 21 and had this incredible near-death experience. He was in the hospital. And he came back and started telling the doctor about it, and the doctor just kind of shook his head, and he planned to have the man committed to an institution, and his mother actually had to sneak him out with the help of another doctor through the back of the hospital. And that wasn't that long ago. This man is still telling his stories, up and around telling his stories, so it wasn't that long ago. But that's how much emphasis we place on the body. You take a guy like Jesus who comes along and says, you're more than the body. I'm in this world, but I'm not of it. And people think he's crazy. It's just a natural knee-jerk reaction from so many of us. We put so much emphasis on this. We put emphasis on our education. We put emphasis on our financial status. We put emphasis on the number of friends we have. That's kind of the fake lure of something like Facebook. How many friends do you have on Facebook? Well, it says 8,569, but I really have one. That means nothing. Those numbers mean nothing. And it's kind of a shame that the word friend has been so abused in that way, to say someone who clicks on my picture, is my friend. It just doesn't really mean anything. And if it does mean something, you might need to be checked in someplace. And you probably will be eventually. But anyway, the emphasis we placed, it's understandable why we have placed so much emphasis on the body and the experience we have here. And all of the relationships and just everything that's involved. Jesus talked about something here that I think addresses this in a way that we may not think of normally when we read this scripture or this passage. He says, "Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skins burst, and the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved. And that's a photograph of a wineskin, an actual wineskin. It's a skinned animal, basically, that, with the feet and neck and everything tied up. And that's how they used to do it. You'd put fresh wine in a fresh wineskin, and the wine would ferment and expand the skin. And the skin is fully expanded, and you put new wine into that, it'll blow up. And Jesus is not talking about wine and wineskins. He never does mean what he says in this regard. He always uses analogies, uses ideas that help us understand something of a deeper nature. But when you think of yourself, just what I described about how most of us think of our body, that's a consciousness. It's an understanding. It's a thing that we call ourselves. Self-image, personality. It's that surface part of us. That is the old wineskin. And we are the wine that has been put into this. It's our awareness is living in this context. But what he's saying is that the spiritual path requires a change. We let go of this old wineskin, and we let go of this old self-definition. We have to let go of this old self-definition because that's not who and what we are. And I think that's exactly what happens to the near-deather, is they instantly discard the old wineskin of self-definition. And they're not always quite sure what to do. They say it takes about 7 years for a person to actually integrate that experience into their life. And it's not easy. Many go through divorce. Many attempt suicide to get back to where they were. Many just, stuff it. They try to keep it quiet. They don't talk to anybody about it. But they know what happened. When I was in Bay City, Michigan, at my first ministry, I had just read Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life. And this man who was in his 80s came into my office. And he said, and I'd never met him, and he'd never met me, of course. And he said, "Would you mind if I'd share something with you?" And I said, "Sure." He said when he was 17 years old, he drowned. And he had this incredible experience. He said he went through this thing that he said, I can only describe it as a tunnel. And at the end of this tunnel was this bright light, and it just was absolute love and just absolute beauty. And I said, have you ever read any of this literature based on the near-death experience, on what you're talking about? He said, no, I've never read it. He described a classic near-death experience, and had never been exposed to the literature. Never shared it with anybody. He said, I'm afraid to tell anybody because they'll think I'm crazy. And I said, well, you came to the right place, because I don't think you're crazy. And it's like that to me was one of many confirmations that these people are actually doing this and having these experiences. But that was, he was in his 80s. He told me, I think he was 83, something like that. And he had been carrying this with him all this time. He had this other definition of who he was, of what's available, of some experience that he couldn't quite explain, but it was the most real experience he'd ever had. And I think that says something too, that he was afraid to share it because it would be like a precious thing you don't want dirty. And that's what a lot of people say. They share their experience and they're immediately put down as being crazy, or they're on drugs, or whatever, the explanation, the lack of oxygen to the brain, or whatever way they try to explain it away. And the people that have had the experience say there is no way that it wasn't real. That was real. And I'm not who I thought I was. That's the important thing. I'm something greater. So we don't want to have a near-death experience to have this, and so we approach it kind of tiptoe into the arena of this by talking about it on a regular basis, by reading books and all that. We encourage meditation. Meditation, if it's practiced properly, is a kind of near-death experience. It's a letting go to the point of you realize you're not who you thought you were. You're something greater. And in a sense, you can follow that same pattern, that if you let go enough, you will experience a level of love that you can't describe. You will experience a level of oneness that is far beyond any concept you can come up with. It's an absolute knowing that life energy that permeates your being is God. You probably would not feel like calling it that. That's the name everybody refers to it, because we think of the old man in the sky and the thunder and lightning, all the stuff that we surround that image with. But it is the reality, an underlying reality, that is the source of all things. And you know that. You know it without doubt. But you go talk to some religious person about that, and they'll think, again, that you're crazy. You know, I was on the radio for many years, early in one of my ministries, and 11 years. And I talked about meditation, got a letter from some fundamentalists that said, you know, you'll lose your mind if you meditate. And I wrote back and said, you're absolutely right. Thank God. We want to lose the mind. We want to lose the mind that keeps us bound. We want to lose the old wineskin. That's what it is. That's the mind we're going to lose. But the world clings to the old wineskin. That's how we define ourselves. I'm the old wineskin. The old dog that can't be taught new tricks. So new unfermented wine is expansive and requires a container that accommodates the fermentation process. The old wineskin represents the self-image. All of us have this. We've been trained to have it. We've been given a lot of help developing it. And maybe you had interests and so on in your life, and people may have steered you other directions because they said, no, you don't want to do that. There's no money in that. There's no fame or fortune in that. And you wouldn't be allowed to be who you really wanted to be, who you were. But maybe you emerged later on. But this whole spiritual thing, as I've said so many times, is not about adding new information. It's about uncovering what's already here, what's already true of us. And we have a hard time with that because, you know, we don't always feel so good. We don't always feel like whatever this thing is I call my true self, it doesn't always feel so good. But when we're at that level, when we're at a level where we're not feeling so good, that's not our true self. It's the self we're familiar with. It's the one we get up in the morning and say, another day, and all this stuff we go through, we repeat. We just go into this treadmill of mind, and we keep walking on this same thing. This is who I am. This is who I am. And this is how I have to experience life. This is how I respond to people. And it's a definition that causes the world to look the same every day. That's why I said that, you know, you get a definition of what does it mean to live on earth? What's this mean? It's different for all of us. We all have different perspectives. And depending on the day, depending on what we're going through, you know, when you're in pain, when you have some major issue going on in your life, things can look different. They look like they're not so good. And I wish, you know, when this thing passes, as this thing passes, life will look better. So what we're saying at the spiritual level is, as long as we're doing that, as long as we're looking out at the world and thinking, once that changes, then I will be happy. You know, that's the looking up to the clouds for the second coming. somebody's going to come and fix everything. But what if it's not true? What if the Gospel of Thomas is more accurate? That the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth and men do not see it. What if that's true? I believe it is. What if your soul is complete now and the evolution, the enlightenment that you're looking for, you'll never achieve because you're looking for it. You're not claiming it. You're not accepting it. You're not affirming it. Are we on this linear time scale, or are we, as we say in metaphysical teachings, now is the only time you'll ever have? If that's true, then how could we evolve? If we truly accept that, now is the only time we have. Now is eternity. And it's pretty easy to prove that now is eternity because you can't get out of it. We try. We're always looking to the future, we're always looking to the past. But where do you do that from? We can only do it from here. We can only be here. So it would only make sense in a just universe, if there is a God, that we are created whole, that we are complete now. And that whatever life looks like to us, we're looking at it through a lens. We're looking at it through, as Paul said, through the glass darkly. Through a glass darkly. Very good image. And that glass that is darkened, smoked, or tinted otherwise is consciousness. It's that wineskin, that mentality, that self-definition that is body-related. But we are much more than that. So Jesus is talking about a literal infusion of the energy of life, this new wine, a conscious connection with the living source of our being. And wine, from a metaphysical point of view, from a spiritual point of view, represents life. The bread and the wine is life and substance, the substance of God, the energy and the essence of the infinite. Manifesting, when you drink the wine and you eat the bread in terms of communion, you're taking on this higher energy. That's the point. Most of us don't. When I was baptized, I told you this story, that one of the reasons I wanted to be baptized was to be able to drink the wine and eat the crackers, that went around. Because there was just something about that I wanted to do. And that's not much grape juice, just a little glass and a little piece of bread, but it looked different. And there was something about getting that. It was like reaching a point of, some major point in your life. But once I started doing that, I didn't really understand the symbology of it. And that's one of the problems with all of religion, is we start worshiping the symbology and we forget what's behind it. You take out a piece of money, it says, "In God we trust." Do we? The more of those bills I have in my wallet, the more trust I have, actually. We kind of forget what that means, the symbol, "In God we trust." What that is, it's a brilliant reminder that there is something greater than this thing you're holding in your hand. There's a greater source. But we're living with the thing we have in our hand. That's our reality. And again, it makes perfect sense because it's there, we have it. But what if you don't have it? Do you still have the trust? Do you still have that understanding that there's something deeper, something more profound that's present? That's what this whole spiritual thing is about. So Jesus is talking about this new wine. In order for this new wine in order for our consciousness to be infused with this new wine, we have to let go of the old. And the old is the old self-definition. I am not who I thought I was. I'm not this. I'm not this body. I'm not this history. I'm not this person surrounded by these certain friends. I'm not this person in this profession. I'm something more than all of this. I'm in this world, I'm playing these roles, but I'm not of it. The day will come when I'll step out of this, just as Alta has done. Step out of all the roles that we have played and realize that I still am I. Somebody asked Henry David Thoreau what he would be when he grew up. He said, I'll be I. Are we I? Have we ever been I? Have we ever been who we are? Is that how we live our lives, from that place, from that center? And for most of us, we're responding, we're reacting to something. We're protecting this self-image that we have built. And it's a pretty hard job a lot of times. But this infusion of energy, new life, it requires a letting go of the old. And this is not necessarily a struggle. You know, you sit down in your time of quiet and you just start letting go. I'm not who I thought. I'm not this person. I'm something much more. You don't struggle to try to break through and make something happen. It's a letting go. And that letting go, there's a natural infilling. There's a natural awakening that comes. But most of us are, you know, we look at our watches. Well, I've got 10 minutes for that natural something to come, and if I don't, I got to go, you know, someplace else. And we're not real free with the whole concept of letting go. I'll let go for 10 minutes. Whatever that means, I'll just stop doing what I always do. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop thinking. You ever notice when you sit down and try to stop thinking, what happens? Don't think of pink horses. All you do is think of pink horses. So we don't try to not do something. We act as if I'm here with a totally open mind. I'm an open vessel. I'm a new wineskin waiting to be filled. To be filled with what? New wine that's never been around before. Something new. Something different. And that doesn't mean that I go out and try to make myself be different. If you try to make yourself be different, you're going to look like somebody else. You're going to look like a crowd that you run with. That's one of the problems with being a teenager. You try to conform, try to fit in. I told you my football story many times. I tried to be a football player because that's what everybody did. And I weighed about 75 pounds, I think. And the coach put me on line. I was a lineman, 75-pound lineman. And I got knocked out one day. It was one of the best impacts I've ever had in my life, because when I woke up, I said, I'm done with this. I think I'll take up ping pong. But I was trying to fit in. And you know, that's a very strong thing at that age. And so we never quite lose that we have to fit in. We have to fit in on this planet. We have to fit in someplace. And I'm not saying let's just go against the grain all the time and make waves all the time, but trying to do something you're not cut out for, you're going to get knocked out. When I woke up, the whole world looked green. Everything was green. So I knew something was wrong. So I took my uniform in and turned it in and said, I don't care what anybody thinks, my brain is more important than that. So Jesus is suggesting the need to let go of who we think we are so that which we truly are may emerge. Jesus is saying, make room for you. And we say this a lot. You know, people say, be yourself. You'll see ads, you know, say, be yourself, and the person in the picture on the ad looks just like everybody else. It's like they're doing something dramatic or something in the ad, you know, in the photograph, but they're just like some other group that's out there. They get these models that appeal to the masses. That's the whole point of sales. And I'm not berating that, but don't find yourself in propaganda, in ads. You know who you are. I know who I am. I knew the first day I put shoulder pads on that I was not a football player. I knew that. But I had to fit in. I wanted to fit in. So when you have a fight going on in yourself, I know that's not right, but I want to fit in. Always follow the one that says, I know that's not right. Because it always is right. It comes out. Sometime you're going to be put in a situation where that thing you're trying to be is totally just devastated. And you'll find that's not you. You'll say, my life is over. It's all done. It's not. It's just beginning. When you give up that kind of garbage, that kind of a garbage thought, you'll be a lot healthier. Paul said the same thing in a slightly different way. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. I've always loved that. Do not be conformed to this world. We all have to find that, what that means. How am I conforming to this world? Are you worried about something right now? You're conformed to the world. We all do it. If you're worried, you're saying, I'm something less than this problem, so I should worry. I've got something to worry about. But to be transformed by the renewal of your mind would be to say, that which is in me is greater than that which is in the world. It's a revolutionary thought. Something in me is greater than this thing that is facing me at this moment, or that I'm facing at this moment. And you can actually make the shift from that weaker self to the stronger self. And you'll feel good about it. You'll feel empowered by it. And again, it doesn't mean you go out and destroy all the things that are anti-you. You just let that go. I walked away from a professional football career. So what? It's like, what was that? You know, it might as well not even existed. You think of a pool of water with an inlet and an outlet, a continual flow which keeps the pool fresh, free from stagnation. That's how we're designed. But those old wineskins of self-image, that blocks that. We dam it up, and that flow stops, and we feel like life isn't too meaningful. It's just, it's boring, so I need to do something else. I need to go do something to make it exciting. And it's really just a matter of letting go, not trying to go out and do something dramatic, but letting go. In your times of quiet, practice letting go of states of consciousness that have stagnated into fear, self-doubt, or pessimism that rob you of your spiritual esteem. We all know what these are. And we feel sometimes like we have no choice but to hold them, but to keep ourselves bound by them. But we do have a choice, and we can make that choice. You can begin today to see yourself from your center of strength rather than from this reactionary point of weakness. In your quest for spiritual understanding, don't forget the letting go of the old wineskins part. The thing you seek is already present. That's what's important to remember. I'm already I. I'll be I. I am I. Right now. It is you at the most pristine spiritual level. That's what we're looking for. All right? Thank you for coming out. And I guess we're going to have a birthday party. Is that a celebration of some kind? So that we didn't know this was going to happen. So thank you for doing that, and hope to see you down there.
You've been watching a talk presented at the Unity Church of Grand Junction by Reverend Doug Bator. We would like to thank everyone who joined us here today in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado, as well as those of you who are joining us online. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Also, please feel free to share this video with anyone you think might be interested or benefit from this message. If this video brought value to your life, please consider making a donation by clicking the link below to our PayPal donation account. Thanks again so much for watching.